Now, all interviewers have their own style, and my style is to try to get to the point and to be intensely curious and to be brief, because the subject counts. Now, too many interviews you watch today, television talk shows guilty of this a lot, and sports interviews in locker rooms, is that it's all about the interviewer. It's showing off. So if you turn on my show, the guest should be talking 90% of the time. 90%. Of course, it ain't about me. It's about him or her. Too many people, it revolves around them. You know, it's my show, and you're a subject. You're an adjunct. You're a prop. You're never a prop on my show. And so when you see a lot of bad interviews, and so sometimes you'll see a guy in a locker room with the winning pitcher of a World Series game. Okay, Cliff Lee, opening game 19 of the 2009 World Series. Cliff, when you were on the Indians this year, you were 14-12, and then you got traded to the Phillies. With the Phillies is in the middle of a locker room. Phillies, you were 5-1, and then tonight you come into this game. You had that curveball working, the fastball working, you hit the corners, you seem to be way ahead of the batters, and then you put the mic in front of him. There was no question asked. The interviewer is telling him all he knows about an event we just saw, whereas my question would have been, what'd you do tonight? What was it like? I could go into a locker room, is the truth, and not know the sport and not know if the person I'm interviewing, let's say the coach or manager, had won or lost, and still get through 4 or 5 questions, without knowing that. Like, what surprised you tonight? Can you use tonight the next time you play? Did you have a plan for this evening? Did they do something you didn't expect? What's the long-range effect of tonight? I don't know the sport. I don't know if they won or lost. But all questions are curious. And to me, too many interviewers are not curious. They're curious. They're only interested in themselves and not interested in the subject or what the subject has to say. And another thing they don't do is listen. And the key to interviewing is listening. If I've never asked a question thinking about the next question. Never had a question prepared. I've got a blue card that has bullet points about the subject and what's been happening, but I've never had a question written out, ever. Because if I start listing questions, then I'm going to look at what's the next one. I'm not listening to the answer. This happened to me once. I was touring for a book, one of my books, and I was on a show called Good Morning Dallas. It had a man and a woman host. Now you can picture what they look like. I don't even have to tell you. You know what they look like. You're right. Okay. Now the woman is interviewing me. She's got the blonde hair, the frizzles, all thing. And she's got 6 or 7 questions written out. I can see them written. I'm sitting, she's sitting. And every time she throws to me to ask the question, I'm answering, I could see that she's like looking at the monitor, checking her eyelashes, looking down, and she's not listening. I know she's not listening. And the crew knows she's not listening because they've been watching her for years. So her third question is, tell me, Mr. King, trying to look intellectual, what makes a good talk show host? So I start to answer, and I see she's off. She ain't looking at all. So I said, well, I can't speak for others. But in my case, what helps a lot was being employed by the CIA. Because what the CIA does is, they give me clues every night that I send out signals to spies around the world, and they in turn get great guests from me. And her next question was, what's the effect on married life? So it rings bad in my ear when I hear, because I think it's an art form, and I don't take much credit for it, because I had it when I was a kid. I was born with the gift of curiosity. I'm not a big believer in God or anything. I don't know where it came from. If there is a God, I thank him or her. But wherever it came from, to have that, it's a gift. I remember when I was a kid at ball games, the end of a game, most kids wanted autographs. I never would care about an autograph. I would run down the street with a Pee Wee Reese, who later I got to know. But now I'm 10, 11 years old. I'm running down the street. Pee Wee in the third inning, why did they bunt? Why did you bunt? Why'd you do this? Why? It was always why. Why? And why still fascinates me to this day. Why do people do what they do? What makes them tick? And one of the reasons I loved radio, especially that 3-hour spot, that is I could go through it. You see, television today, you have to go right to the subject, right to the thing, bam, so if I've got a lieutenant on, like the rape case that occurred in Northern California, big rape case and gang rape, I had a lieutenant on last night. What happened with the rape? Whereas if this were the radio show and I had 3 hours with the lieutenant, what made you be a cop? What brought you to this minute? How hard is it to investigate a rape case, as say a murder case? What difficulties occur in an investigation? Are there techniques toward getting cooperation? How do you deal with a hostile witness? All those are fascinating to me. Now, on television, the theory is you would lose the audience taking that route. But that's the way I was great. I was never a newsman. I never covered a news event. I was in the middle of news events. There was a building blew up in New York once. I called in. I was on the air after 15 stations describing the blow up. But Ted Koppel said to me once, if there was a fire, because he was raised in news, and I was raised in pure interviewing, personality interviewing, and a fireman came running out of the fire, Ted Koppel's first question would be, what caused this fire? And Larry King's first question would be, why do you want to fight fires? That's the absolute truth.
During the gap when you were off the air in the early 70s, I mean, you're known for interviewing all types of people, from just regular people to kings and world leaders, politicians, entertainers. Was there any fallout from that experience when you were off the air, and what happened? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the troubles you had, and then if there was any fallout in terms of coming back.
Fallout meaning what?
Well, if it impacted on how you approached
no.
interviewing or anything.
What happened to me personally never affected me, because that I leave at the door. I leave my ego at the door. I leave any personal situation involving me. If I've used the word I 10 times in 50 years, it's a lot. I don't bring it into it. I have that, whatever that ability is to leave it at the door. So whatever troubles I had, they don't come into it. Now, they may have played an inner part in question. That's something the audience would have to gauge. In other words, was I any different when I came back than before? I didn't feel any different. I don't feel any different today, tonight, than I did. My guest is Bobby Darin. Good morning. Tell me about how Mac the Knife came about. I'm still the same. To me, now, you may see me as more refined, or that person say he's more on top of things, or he's not as good as he was, but to me, I'm still the same. I'm still the kid running down the street saying, why did you bunt? That kid is still present in me at this age. The problems I faced were my fault. I mean, I was involved in the gaga of the world. I'm in the middle of this. All right, I'm interviewing Jim Garrison. He's the district attorney from New Orleans. And he is investigating the Kennedy murders on his own. Later led to the movie JFK. Got to know Jim pretty good, liked him. And he was convinced that there was a plot, that Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy, it was set up. He may have been part of it, but there was a lot involved. Could have gone back to Cuba. He traced a lot of things, and he thought he was onto something big. Eventually a trial that he lost. So I was friends with Lou Wolfson, who recently passed away. He was a big financier in Miami, known as the Great Raider of the 50s, and interesting guy. And Lou and I were pretty close. And so Lou, I had dinner with him subsequent to that, and he said, "What'd you think of Jim Garrison?" He said, "That's really interesting." Because Lou was into conspiracies a lot. I said, "Well, I don't know Jim Garrison, but I thought he was a hell of an interview, a hell of a story." He said, "Well, let's ask Dick Gerstein." And Dick was the district attorney in Miami. What does he think? So Dick says, "Well, I don't know the particulars of the Kennedy story, but I have great respect for Jim Garrison." And by the way, later became a judge. He said, I'm sure Jim thinks he's in on something, right? He's not a charlatan. He's not looking for headlines. If Jim says that, he feels he's got the story. I don't know the story." So Lou Wolfson said, "Can we set up a dinner?" So we had dinner. Me, Dick Gerstein, Lou Wolfson, and Jim Garrison. Now remember, I'm still a heady kid in all of this. I'm only in the business just 15 years, maybe 10. I'm still, whoa. Lou Wolfson was like a hero to me. So we're talking, and Lou looks at Jim Garrison and says, "What do you need?" Jim says, "Well, the state of Louisiana is going to stop financing this thing I'm on because you're running out of money." "What do you need?" He said, "Well, I need $25,000. So Lou Wolfson, "I tell you what, I'll give you $5,000 a month for 5 months to aid in your investigation. And how do we get the first $5,000 to you? We're going to do this in cash." So Dick Gerstein says, so Garrison says, "Okay." Lou says, "All right, Larry, you come to my house. I'll give you $5,000. And he was a control freak. "And you going back tomorrow?" "Yeah." "So Larry, you drive Garrison to the airport and give him the $5,000. I said, "Okay." Now, in the subsequent months, we'll set it up. Gerstein will deliver it, or I wasn't going to Orleans, so Dick will get it. Somehow we'll get it to him. So I drove him to the airport and gave him the $5,000. By the way, when he got out of the car, I'll never forget this, gets out of the car, looks in on the driver's side, on the passenger side, and says to me, "They're going to kill Robert Kennedy." It's the last words Jim Garrison ever said to me. "They're going to kill Robert Kennedy." And he left. Now the second month came about, and Gerstein got the $5,000, gave it to him. Now the third month is coming around, and Lou Wolfson gives me the $5,000 that I'm going to give to Gerstein to give to Garrison. I owed income taxes. I owed about $5,000. So, Lou Wolfson now goes to jail on a stock fraud. So we've got the third $5,000. So I said to Dick Gerstein, "Do you think that I could use the $5 to pay the taxes? And then I'll get the $5 somewhere and we'll eventually give it to Garrison." Well, I never got the $5. I used it to pay taxes. Gerstein said it would be fine. He explained it to Garrison. Lou goes to jail. Lou comes out of jail. During the interim time before he went to jail, he had asked me to see if I could get Richard Nixon to look into his case. Possible pardon or something. Or he always felt he was innocent, and I felt he was innocent, by the way. This was subsequent to the Garrison thing, prior to the Garrison thing. So, Nixon gets elected. I knew Nixon. I'd interviewed him. I call up Nixon and said, "Can I talk to you about something?" And the proposal was Wolfson was going to form an organization called Democrats for Nixon, and he would fund it. In return for Nixon should look into his case, the possibility of a pardon. All he wanted to do was look into it. So I fly to New York. Nixon is elected but has not taken office yet. It's a cold night in December. He's at the Pierre Hotel. I call him up. He says, "Okay, listen, I'll be down this is Nixon, President-elect. I'll be down the elevator in about a half hour. Meet me and we'll walk over. I'm going to Washington to name some cabinet members. You'll walk me over to the helipad. I'm going to a helipad." So he comes down off the elevator. Secret Service is there, there's reporters. "Hey, Larry, how are you?" Now we're walking down the street. And he says to me, "What brings you to New York? What do you want to see me about?" And I couldn't ask him. Something told me this could be big trouble. I just couldn't ask him. So I just said, "Well, I wanted to make sure. I want to congratulate you. I'm a Democrat, and I hope you come on my show sometime." He said, "Well, you could have asked me that on the phone." I said, "Yeah, it was nice to see you. I always like coming to New York." So we walked a few blocks. He went his way, I went my way. I'll never forget some reporters following me. "Who are you? What was he talking to you about?" But I never brought. Lou goes to jail, and now he's pissed. that I never asked. When he gets out of jail, what happened to my $5,000? I used it to pay. So he goes down to Dick Gerstein and charges me with fraudulently taking the $5,000. So Gerstein is strapped, but he's my friend. So they appoint a special prosecutor who's going to prosecute me on taking the $5,000, which I never took. Was all anyway. It all blows up. The whole Garrison story breaks. His supporting the Wolfson raising money, and I was indicted. So I lost my jobs. 3 months later, the judge throws the whole thing out, but I lost my jobs. And I paid a price for ego. I let my ego get the best of me. Hey, Garrison, Gerstein, Wolfson, Kennedy. I was in a high. I was always in money troubles, which led me into this. It was my fault. I couldn't say it wasn't my fault. Gerstein had to do it, or he would have been. He was larger than me. He was district attorney. What was he doing, running $5,000 from one guy in Miami to the district attorney? It was really convoluted. And, but it was, as I look back, an experience in my life. Did it affect me later? I don't, the question is, did it affect me? I don't know if it did. I later saw Dick Gerstein a lot. He went into private life. He subsequently, everybody died that's associated with this. Everybody died. But I did see some stuff Garrison had that never got into the press or into the trial that has always left me open on this. An interview with a pilot. He played the interview for us at that dinner. A pilot who was hired by this guy in New Orleans to fly to Dallas. He's going to pick up a passenger at the airport. Didn't give him the name, but described him, would fit the description of Lee Harvey Oswald. You wait at the Dallas airport. This kid's going to come, take him to Mexico. They paid him $5,000, this pilot, and you'll get another $5,000 when you come back. And we'll pay for the plane and everything. He said, well, I'm at the airport, the guy never came. I'm listening to this on tape. And Garrison said to Gerstein, what would you do with this? The pilot eventually died of a heart attack that people questioned. But I heard that tape. A totally believable guy. What did he have to lose? The guy never came. I interviewed the cop who arrested Lee Harvey Oswald. My life's been a swirl. He arrested him in the movie theater after he shot Tippit. Oswald said only one thing on the drive from the movie theater to the jail. I'm a patsy. He didn't say he's innocent. Didn't say just, I'm a patsy. What does patsy mean? Patsy lends you to think that he was involved in this and someone was supposed to be downstairs at the book depository that wasn't there. And he panicked, ran around, shot Tippit, ran to a movie theater. Why would he use patsy? Then he had to be killed, didn't he? See, this is for the conspiracy theorists. Because if Oswald, he's going to have a ton of information. So you got to get somebody to kill him who's totally like an innocent. You get Jack Ruby, who loves the Kennedys and who's crazy. Get Jack Ruby to do it. You can't do it. You, the conspirator, you're going to get caught, but you got to get rid of Oswald. And I'm in the swirl of all this. I mean, I've heard all this stuff. It was heady. I paid a price for heady.
When you were doing the Mutual overnight show, did you have fun with the people who called in, the listeners who called in? Were there some regulars?
Well, we had some regulars. We had the Portland laugher. This was a guy calling from Portland, Oregon. All he did was laugh. But he had the greatest laugh I ever heard. To this day, I can still hear it. I'm sure Mutual still has the tapes. Hysterical laughter. And then I'd ask him a few questions, he'd just keep laughing, and I'd hang up on him. It was just insane. We had the Syracuse chair. This guy called it one night. Carter and Reagan were going to debate with John Anderson for the election of the 1980 election. Reagan insisted that Anderson be used. in that debate because he was running on the Independent Party. Carter wanted it only Carter and Reagan, so Carter didn't show up. So it was just Reagan and Anderson. Carter never showed up. Originally, they were going to have an empty chair sit on the stage, the League of Women Voters, but they decided that would be too theatrical and maybe unfair to Carter. So it was just Reagan and Anderson, and there was no chair. And this guy calling in was the chair, and it was his big moment. He's backstage, and he don't go on. And he'd call regularly, I'm the chair. We try to find an ottoman to run with him. I only have a few minutes left on this one.
Okay.
But I can do 2 hours next week if you want,
Okay.
if you need more.
Before Larry King Live started in '85, there were some experiments on the Larry King Show, which was the Mutual radio show, where for a time in the early '80s, C-SPAN came in and shot it for television, and then I think it was partially syndicated. How were
I don't know
those?
if they syndicated, but C-SPAN would shoot us once a month. We did a show called The Editors, and I would have the late Jack Nelson, who just died, of the LA Times, and there were 3 others we used. David Broder of the Washington Post, David Gergen, who's on my television show now, Gergen, and Bob Novak. These 4 would gather the last Friday of every month. It's called The Editors on Larry King's radio show, and C-SPAN would telecast it. And there were other television shows that came and did this, but it was never, there was no idea. Oh, when CNN started, this is a cute story. The original program director of CNN, trying to remember his name, I can't think, he wanted to do all night on CNN the Larry King Lives, the Larry King radio show on CNN, because what were they going to do from midnight to 5 in the morning? They didn't want to pay anybody, they didn't want to hire anybody, so they would pay me to do it. But Mutual was afraid that while it would give it some attention, it would take away radio listeners. So they never worked it out. But the original plan, I would have been on CNN when they went on the air. I would have been all night on CNN, the television of my radio show. Similar to what Imus did with MSNBC when they televised his radio show. This would have been in 1980, all night long, the Larry King radio show on CNN. 5 years later, I wind up on CNN.
Okay, well, that's a